The ceremony hall on Galactic Unity Station was filled with light. Delegates from 12 different species stood in neat rows, their voices mixing into a soft hum of conversation. Banners hung from the high ceiling, each one showing the symbol of a different world. Today was the day of the partnership ceremony, when volunteers from different species would be paired together for one full year of cultural exchange. Daniel Cooper stood among the other human volunteers. He was 32 years old, with brown hair and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything. He wore the simple gray uniform of a cultural liaison, and he kept his hands folded in front of him as he waited. Around him, the other humans whispered nervously. This was a big moment for all of them. Danny was not nervous. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time. The Kethrani delegation entered the hall, and everyone turned to look. The Kethrani were known across the galaxy as the most beautiful species in existence. Their skin glowed with soft light that shifted in colors like the northern lights on Earth. They moved with grace, their tall bodies flowing like water as they walked. Every eye in the room followed them. Danny watched them carefully. He noticed how they held their heads high, how they looked at other species with polite smiles that never reached their eyes. He had studied the Kethrani for years. He knew what those smiles really meant. The ceremony began. One by one, the pairs were announced. A human woman was matched with a Varth male. A human man was paired with a Telani female. Each time, the partners stepped forward, exchanged greetings, and moved to the side of the hall together. The crowd clapped politely after each pairing. Danny waited. His name had not been called yet. He noticed something strange. The Kethrani delegates kept glancing toward the back of their group, where someone stood alone in the shadows. They whispered to each other, and their skin flickered with colors that Danny recognized as amusement and contempt. Something was wrong. Finally, the announcer called his name. Daniel Cooper of Earth will be paired with Veth Ara of Kethran Prime. The whispers stopped. The Kethrani delegation parted, and a female figure walked forward slowly. Danny understood immediately why they had been laughing. Veth Ara was Kethrani, but she looked nothing like the others. Her skin was gray and dull, marked with dark patches like old scars. There was no light coming from her body, no soft glow, no shifting colors. Where other Kethrani shimmered like living stars, she was dark and still. She kept her eyes on the floor as she walked, her shoulders bent forward as if she was trying to make herself smaller. The hall was silent. Danny could feel everyone watching him, waiting to see what he would do. He knew what they expected. Other volunteers in past ceremonies had requested reassignments when they were paired with partners their species considered undesirable. It was allowed. It was even common. The Kethrani officials watched him with knowing smiles. They expected him to refuse. They had probably assigned Veth Ara to a human on purpose, thinking it would be amusing to watch the rejection. Danny stepped forward. He walked across the space between them until he stood directly in front of Veth Ara. She still had not looked up. He could see her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Danny placed his right hand over his heart and bowed his head. Then he extended his hand toward her, palm up, fingers slightly curved. It was the traditional Kethrani greeting, the one used between equals who wished to show respect. It had taken him 3 months to learn how to do it correctly. Veth Ara, he said, and he pronounced her name perfectly, with the soft click in the middle that most non-Kethrani could never manage. It is my honor to be your partner. Veth Ara's head snapped up. Her eyes were large and dark, and they stared at him with pure shock. No one had ever greeted her this way. No one had ever spoken her name with such care. The Kethrani delegation had gone completely silent. Their skin colors shifted rapidly, showing confusion and something that might have been anger. Danny kept his hand extended. He smiled at her, a real smile, warm and genuine. "I have been looking forward to meeting you," he said simply. For a long moment, Vethara did not move. She searched his face, looking for the trick, looking for the hidden cruelty. She had learned long ago that kindness always came with conditions. People were nice to her only when they wanted something, or when they were setting her up for a joke, but she found nothing false in Danny's eyes. He was simply looking at her, seeing her, waiting for her to be ready. Slowly, carefully, Vethara placed her hand in his dot. Her skin was cool and smooth, different from human skin, but not unpleasant. Danny closed his fingers gently around hers and gave a small nod. "There," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "That was not so hard, was it?" Something changed in Vethara's face. The hard wall of defense cracked, just a little. She did not smile, not yet, but some of the tension left her shoulders. The announcer cleared his throat and continued with the ceremony, but Danny barely heard the rest. He led Vethara to the side of the hall where the other pairs waited. The humans around them stared with curiosity and confusion. The Kethrani glared with open hostility. Danny ignored them all. He stood beside Vethara and did not let go of her hand. Commander Lydia Grant approached them after the ceremony ended. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Danny and Vethara for a long moment, and then she nodded slowly. "Interesting choice, Cooper," she said. "It was not a choice," Danny replied. "It was exactly what I wanted." Vethara looked at him again. That same searching look, trying to understand. Danny met her gaze and held it. He knew this would not be easy. He knew that Vethara had been hurt many times before, that she would not trust him quickly, that she would wait for him to show his true colors. He knew that her own people had sent her here as a joke, a disposable embarrassment to be paired with an alien who could not possibly understand her worth. But Danny did understand. He understood better than anyone in this station. He had waited years for this moment. And now that it was here, he was not going to waste it. "Come," he said to Vethara. "Let me show you where we will be living. I think you will like the view of the stars." Vethara hesitated for just a moment. Then she nodded and walked beside him out of the ceremony hall dot behind them. The Kethrani delegates watched with narrowed eyes. They had expected entertainment. They had expected rejection. They had not expected this dot, and for the first time in her long and lonely life, Vethara felt something she had almost forgotten existed: hope. The first week was difficult. Vethara moved through the shared quarters like a ghost, staying close to the walls, speaking only when Danny asked her a direct question. She woke before him and went to sleep after him, as if she was trying to exist in the spaces between his presence. She ate her meals alone in her room when she could, and when she could not avoid eating with him, she finished quickly and excused herself. Danny did not push her. He gave her space and time. He left food for her on the table when he ate breakfast. He asked her opinion on small things, like which programs to watch on the viewing screen or what temperature she preferred in the quarters. He treated her like a person whose thoughts mattered. This confused Vethara deeply. She had spent her entire life being ignored. Among the Kethrani, beauty was everything. Their glowing skin was not just appearance, but communication. They spoke with light, expressing emotions through colors that shifted across their bodies. A Kethrani without luminescence was like a human without a voice. Worse, actually, because at least a silent human could still be seen. Vethara could not glow. She had been born with a genetic condition that left her skin dark and still. Her people had tried treatments when she was young, painful procedures that left scars, but never brought light. Eventually, they stopped trying. She was assigned to technical work, labor that beautiful Kethrani considered beneath them. She learned to repair systems and build machines because no one cared if an ugly Kethrani worked with her hands. She had never been paired with anyone. She had never been chosen for anything except this joke of a partnership. And yet this human treated her like she mattered. On the 8th day, Vethara finally asked the question that had been burning inside her. They were sitting on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Danny had suggested they come here because he thought she might like the quiet. He was right, though she had not told him so. "Why did you accept me?" she asked. Her voice was rough from disuse. She did not look at him when she spoke. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you are exactly the partner I was hoping for." That is not an answer. It is the truth. Vethara turned to face him. "I am ugly. I am broken. My own people sent me here because they wanted to embarrass themselves as little as possible. They thought pairing me with an alien would keep me hidden." Her voice grew harder. "So why did you not ask for someone better? Someone who glows? Someone beautiful?" Danny looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were calm, not pitying, not uncomfortable. Just calm. "When I was younger," he said, "I worked as an anthropologist." "Do you know what that is?" Vethara shook her head. "It means I studied cultures. I traveled to different places and learned how people lived, what they believed, what they valued." Danny leaned back in his chair. "I spent 2 years studying how different species define beauty. Do you know what I learned? What? That beauty is just an agreement. Nothing more. On one planet, the most attractive people are the ones with the largest ears. On another, beauty means having many scars from battles. Humans have changed their standards hundreds of times throughout our history. Things that were ugly become beautiful. Things that were beautiful become ugly. It changes with every generation." Vethara was silent, listening. "The Kethrani decided that glowing skin is beautiful," Danny continued. "But that is not a law of the universe. It is just an agreement your people made with themselves a long time ago. It can be changed. It should be changed. It cannot be changed," Vethara said bitterly. "It has been this way for thousands of years. Everything changes eventually." Danny smiled slightly. "Humans are very good at changing things." Vethara did not know how to respond to that. She turned back to the stars and said nothing, but something inside her shifted. Just a little. 3 days later, High Counselor Meyerveth came to visit. He arrived without warning, walking into their quarters as if he owned them. He was tall even for a Kethrani, and his skin blazed with golden light. He looked around the room with obvious disgust, as if the very air was beneath him. "Human," he said, not bothering to learn Danny's name. "I have come to discuss your situation." Danny stood calmly. "What situation would that be?" Meyerveth's eyes flickered toward Vethara, who had frozen near the kitchen area. He looked at her the way someone might look at trash that had not been cleaned up. "This arrangement is clearly unsuitable," Meyerveth said. "I am authorized to offer you a replacement partner, a proper Kethrani, one who represents our species appropriately." He smiled, and his skin pulsed with self-satisfied yellow. "I am sure you would prefer someone more pleasant to look at." Danny did not move. His voice remained polite, but something hard entered his eyes. "I am very happy with my current partner," he said. Meyerveth's smile faltered. "Surely you cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious about anything. She cannot even glow. She is defective. Surely you can see that." Danny took a step toward Meyerveth. He was shorter than the Kethrani, but in that moment he seemed larger. "Vethara is my partner," Danny said. "She is intelligent, skilled, and worthy of respect. I will not be accepting any replacement, now or ever." He paused. "And you are no longer welcome in our quarters. Please, leave." Meyerveth stared at him with disbelief. His skin flickered through several colors rapidly, showing anger and confusion. No one spoke to a High Counselor this way. Certainly no alien spoke to a High Counselor this way, but Danny did not look away. He stood his ground and waited. Finally, Myrvith turned and left without another word. The door closed behind him. Danny let out a slow breath. Then he turned to Vethara. She was staring at him with an expression he could not read. Her dark eyes were very wide, and her hands were pressed against her chest. "No one has ever done that before," she whispered. "No one has ever defended me." Danny walked over to her. He did not touch her, respecting her space, but he stood close enough that she could feel his presence. "Get used to it," he said gently, "because I will do it again and again, as many times as needed." Vethara's eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though Kathrani did not cry the way humans did. Her lips trembled. "Why?" she asked again. "Why do you care?" "I am nothing." Danny shook his head slowly. "You are not nothing, Vethara. You have never been nothing." He looked into her eyes. "I see you. I see exactly who you are. Who am I? Someone worth knowing. Someone worth defending." He smiled softly. "Someone beautiful, even if you cannot see it yet." Vethara could not speak. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen something other than failure. Someone had stood up for her. Someone had said she was beautiful and meant it. She did not believe him. Not yet. The walls around her heart were too thick, built from too many years of pain. But for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, those walls could come down. The weeks passed, and slowly, carefully, Vethara began to open. She started eating meals with Danny instead of hiding in her room. She answered his questions with more than one word. She even began asking questions of her own, curious about Earth and human customs and the strange ways his people lived. Danny told her about rain, about oceans, about the way autumn leaves changed color before they fell. Vethara listened with wonder, trying to imagine a world so different from the glass cities of Kethrim Prime. In return, she told him about her work. She was an engineer, she explained, though she said it with shame in her voice. Among the Kethrani, engineering was low work, the kind of job given to those who could not succeed in art or politics or any of the fields where beauty mattered. But when she talked about machines, her voice changed. It became alive in a way Danny had not heard before. She described the systems she had built, the problems she had solved, the elegant solutions she had designed. Her eyes lit up with passion, even though her skin could not glow. Danny listened to every word. He asked questions that showed he understood, that he appreciated the complexity of her work. No one had ever been interested in her engineering before. No one had ever thought it was worth discussing. One evening, as they sat together in the common area, Danny told her he had something to share. "I have not been completely honest with you," he said. Vethara felt her body go cold. Here it was, the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when he would reveal the trick, the joke, the cruelty beneath the kindness. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Danny took a deep breath. "I did not end up with you by accident. I requested a Kethrani partner specifically. And when I saw your name on the list, I knew you were the one I was meant to be paired with." Vethara frowned. "How could you know that? You had never met me." "No, but I knew someone like you a long time ago." Danny's eyes grew distant with memory. "Before I became a diplomat, I was part of a humanitarian mission. We were sent to a Kethrani colony that had been struck by a plague." Vethara went very still. She had heard of this plague. It was not spoken of among her people, but she knew it existed. A sickness that had swept through the outer colonies years ago, killing thousands. "The plague was terrible," Danny continued. "But it had another effect on those who survived. It destroyed their luminescence permanently. Survivors lost their glow and could never get it back." Vethara's breath caught in her throat. I did not know that. Your government does not talk about it. The survivors were hidden, sent to remote places where they would not be seen. Your people were ashamed of them. Danny's voice was quiet but heavy with old pain. I worked with those survivors for 8 months. I helped them rebuild. I learned their language, their customs, their history. And I learned something important. What? I learned that the Kathrani were not always this way. Danny stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. There was an old woman among the survivors. Her name was Sylveth. Before the plague, she had been considered the most beautiful Kathrani of her generation. Her light was famous across worlds. Vethora felt something twist in her chest. She had heard stories of Sylveth when she was young. The great beauty. The shining star. A legend. After the plague took her light, everyone abandoned her, Danny said. Her friends, her lovers, her family. They could not bear to look at her without her glow. She was sent to the colony with the other survivors and forgotten. He turned back to face Vethora. But she was still the same person. Still wise. Still kind. Still brilliant. And she taught me something that changed my life. What did she teach you? She told me that long ago, before your people became obsessed with light, the Kathrani valued different things. Wisdom, skill, kindness, courage. The glow came later. A fashion that became a prison. Danny walked back and sat beside Vethora. She showed me ancient texts, old artwork. Kathrani from thousands of years ago, depicted without any glow at all, celebrated for their deeds instead of their appearance. Vethora shook her head slowly. I have never seen such things. Your government destroyed most of them. They did not want people to know that the old ways ever existed. Danny reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. But Sylva saved some. She gave them to me before she died. She made me promise to keep the truth alive. He handed the chip to Vethora. Her hands trembled as she took it. This is why you accepted me, she whispered. Because of her. Because of her, Danny agreed. And because when I read your file and saw that you were born without luminescence, I knew you had suffered the same way she did. I knew you had been told your whole life that you were worthless. He reached out and gently took her hand. I wanted to show you the truth. The same truth Sylveth showed me. Vethora stared at the data chip. Her entire life, she had believed she was broken. A mistake. A defect that should never have existed. Her own people had treated her like garbage. Like something to be hidden away and forgotten. And now this human was telling her that it was all a lie. That her people had forgotten their own history. That she was not defective at all. I do not know if I can believe this, she said softly. You do not have to believe it right away, Danny replied. Look at the files. See the evidence for yourself. And then decide. That night, Vethora stayed awake for hours, reading through the ancient texts and studying the old artwork. She saw a Kathrani who looked like her, celebrated and honored. She read words of wisdom that had nothing to do with appearance. She found a version of her people that she had never known existed. By morning, she was weeping. The Kathrani did not cry with tears, but they made a sound, a low vibration of grief and release. Danny heard it from his room and came to sit beside her. He did not speak. He simply placed his hand on her shoulder and stayed with her until the sound faded. They lied to me, Vethora finally said. My whole life. Everything they told me was a lie. Yes, Danny said. They did. I thought I was nothing. You were never nothing. Danny squeezed her shoulder gently. You were always worthy. They just made you forget. Vethora turned to look at him. Her dark eyes were red from crying, but something new burned in them. Something that looked like anger. Something that looked like strength. I want to remember, she said. I want everyone to remember. Danny smiled. Then we will make sure they do. 2 days later, they received a message from the Kethrani High Council. Vethara was ordered to return to Kethran Prime immediately. Her partnership with the human had become an embarrassment. She was being recalled in disgrace. But this time, Vethara did not feel fear. She felt something else entirely. She felt ready to fight. High Counselor Marveth delivered the recall order himself. He arrived at their quarters with 2 guards flanking him, his golden skin blazing with triumph. "The High Council has made its decision," he announced. "Vethara is to return to Kethran Prime on the next transport. She will be reassigned to a monitoring station on the Outer Rim, where she will no longer bring shame to our people." Vethara stood in the center of the room. A month ago, she would have bowed her head and accepted this fate. She would have packed her things quietly and disappeared into the darkness, where her people wanted her, but she was not the same person she had been a month ago. "No," she said. Marveth's skin flickered with surprise. "What did you say?" "I said no. I am not leaving." The High Counselor stared at her as if she had grown a second head. Behind him, his guards shifted uncomfortably. This was not how things were supposed to go down. Danny stepped forward to stand beside Vethara. "She has the right to remain here. The partnership program is governed by station law, not Kethrani law. You cannot force her to leave." Marveth's eyes narrowed. "This is Kethrani business, human. It does not concern you. Vethara is my partner. Everything that concerns her concerns me." The High Counselor made a sound of disgust. "You speak as if this creature matters. As if she is anything more than an embarrassment we were foolish enough to send here." He glared at Vethara. "You will come with us. You have no choice." "Actually," a new voice said, "she does have a choice." Commander Lydia Grant stepped into the room. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were cold as ice. 2 station security officers stood behind her. "Commander," Marveth said, his tone suddenly polite, "this is an internal Kethrani matter. There is no need for your involvement." "When it happens on my station, it is my matter," Grant replied. "And I have reviewed the partnership program regulations. Vethara can only be removed if she requested herself or if there is evidence of a crime." She raised an eyebrow. "Has she committed a crime, High Counselor?" Marveth's skin turned a dark red with anger. "This is an insult to the Kethrani people. Then file a formal complaint through proper channels." Grant smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Until then, Vethara stays." The High Counselor looked like he wanted to argue more, but he knew he was outmatched. He turned to Vethara one last time. "This is not over," he said quietly. "The Council will not forget this insult. And neither will I." He left with his guards following close behind. After he was gone, Commander Grant turned to Danny and Vethara. "That was just the first round. They will try again, through official channels this time. You need to be ready." Danny nodded. "I know. I want to call a session with the Joint Council. I want to bring this out into the open." Grant studied him for a long moment. "That is a bold move. Are you sure you want to make this a public fight?" "Yes." Danny looked at Vethara. "If we are going to change anything, people need to see the truth. All of them." The Joint Council session was held 3 days later. Representatives from every species in the galactic unity sat in a great circular chamber, their seats arranged in rings around a central platform. The gallery above was filled with observers from across the station. Marveth stood on one side of the platform, his skin glowing with confidence. He had spent 3 days preparing his arguments. The Kethrani High Council had given him full authority to handle this matter. Danny and Vethara stood on the other side. They had no authority. They had no political power. They had only the truth. The chairman of the council, an elderly Vorath with cracked gray skin, called the session to order. We are here to address the matter of the partnership between Daniel Cooper of Earth and Vethar of Kethron Prime, he announced. High Counselor Marvith has filed a formal request for the partnership to be dissolved and for Vethara to be returned to Kethrani custody. The human has requested the right to respond. Marvith spoke first. His voice was smooth and confident. This partnership was a mistake from the beginning, he said. The purpose of this program is to build understanding between species by showing the best of what each culture has to offer. Vethara is not representative of the Kethrani. She is defective. She cannot communicate through light as all true Kethrani do. Keeping her here is an insult to our people and a mockery of this program. He gestured toward Vethara with obvious contempt. Look at her. She cannot even glow. She is a broken thing, a mistake of genetics that should never have been sent here in the first place. I asked the Council to correct this error and allow us to replace her with a proper Kethrani representative. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many of the delegates seemed uncomfortable with Marvith's harsh words, but no one spoke against him. The Kethrani were powerful. No one wanted to offend them. Then Danny stepped forward. High Counselor Marvith speaks of the best of what each culture has to offer, Danny began. His voice was calm, but carried clearly through the chamber. But I want to ask a question. What does it mean to be the best? Is it only about appearance? Is it only about fitting a certain standard that your people have decided is correct? He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from different species. I once worked with survivors of a plague that struck the Kethrani outer colonies. Thousands of their people lost their luminescence permanently. And do you know what happened to them? They were hidden away, sent to remote stations where no one would have to see them. Their own government erased them from existence because they no longer fit the standard of beauty. Marvith's skin flickered with alarm. This is not relevant to the matter at hand. It is completely relevant, Danny continued, because among those survivors, I met a woman named Sylveth. Before the plague, she was the most celebrated beauty in Kethrani history. After she lost her light, she was abandoned by everyone who had claimed to love her. But she did not stop being wise. She did not stop being kind. She taught me something that the modern Kethrani have forgotten. He pulled out the data chip and held it up for everyone to see. This contains ancient Kethrani texts and artwork. They show a time before the obsession with luminescence, when your people valued wisdom and skill and courage above appearance. These records were nearly destroyed by the current government because they did not want anyone to know the truth. The chamber erupted in whispers. Marvith stepped forward, his skin blazing red. This is lies. Propaganda from a primitive species that does not understand our culture. Then explain these texts, Danny said. Explain this artwork. Explain why your government has worked so hard to hide it. The Varath chairman raised his hand for silence. These are serious accusations. Do you have proof? I have the data chip. I have the testimony of the plague survivors. And I have Vethara herself, who's been told her entire life that she is worthless because of something she cannot control. Danny's voice rose with passion. Is this the best of Kethrani culture? Cruelty toward your own people? Throwing away anyone who does not match your shallow definition of beauty? Marvith was shaking with rage now. He stepped toward Danny, his guards moving with him. You dare to lecture us, human? Your species is young and ignorant. You know nothing of our ways. I know that you sent Vethara here as a joke, Danny replied. You expected her to be rejected and humiliated. You thought it would be funny. And you should have rejected her. Marvith snapped. His control finally broke, and his true feelings poured out. She is a defect, a stain on our species. She should have been corrected at birth, eliminated before she could embarrass us further. The chamber went completely silent. Every delegate stared at Marveth with shock. Even those who valued different things could recognize cruelty when they saw it. Even those who did not understand Kethrani culture could understand what the High Counselor had just revealed. In that moment of silence, Vethara stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. "I am not a defect," she said. "I am Kethrani. I have always been Kethrani, and I choose to stay." She looked at Marveth without fear, without shame. Her dark skin did not glow, but something else burned inside her. Something stronger than light. "I am not leaving, and I will not be silent anymore." The chamber remained silent after Vethara spoke. Every eye was fixed on her, this small, dark figure standing in the center of the greatest political assembly in the galaxy. Marveth's face had gone pale. He realized too late what he had done. His words about correcting defects at birth hung in the air like poison. There was no taking them back. Vethara did not wait for him to recover. She had found her voice, and she was not going to waste it. "I have spent my entire life being told that I am worthless," she said. Her voice was steady now, growing stronger with each word. "My own people taught me to hate myself. They told me I was broken, defective, a mistake. And I believed them. I believed them for so long that I forgot I had any value at all." She looked around the chamber at the delegates from dozens of different worlds. Some of them stared back with sympathy. Others looked uncomfortable. But they were all listening. "But I was never broken," Vethara continued. "I was never a mistake. I am an engineer. I have designed systems that keep ships running and stations functioning. I have solved problems that others could not solve. I have value, real value, not because of how I look, but because of what I can do and who I am." She turned to face Marveth directly. "You sent me here as a joke. You expected me to be rejected and shamed. You thought it would be amusing to watch a human refuse me." Her voice grew hard. "But you were wrong. You were wrong about everything." Marveth opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His skin was flickering rapidly through colors, showing fear and confusion and rage all mixed together. Vethara turned back to the council. "I know I am not the only one. There are other Kethrani like me, born without luminescence, hidden away in shame. There are plague survivors scattered across distant stations, forgotten by our government. They have been told the same lies I was told. They believe they are worthless too." Her voice rose, filling the chamber. "But they are not worthless. None of us are. And I am speaking now for all of them. We exist, we matter, and we will not be erased anymore." The Varath chairman leaned forward. His old eyes were thoughtful as he studied Vethara. "What do you want from this council?" he asked. "I want the partnership to stand," Vethara said. "I want to remain here with Daniel Cooper, who was the first person in my life who has ever treated me with true respect. And I want the council to send the message that individual worth is not determined by appearance." A long silence followed. Then the chairman nodded slowly. "The council will vote." The voting took only a few minutes. One by one, the representatives cast their decisions. The Varath voted in favor of Vethara. The Telani voted in favor. Species after species sided with her, some because they believed in her words, others because Marveth's cruelty had disgusted them. When the final count was announced, it was overwhelming. The partnership would stand. Vethara would remain on the station. Marveth was recalled to Kethran Prime that same day. The High Council claimed it was for consultation, but everyone knew the truth. He had embarrassed them in front of the entire galaxy. His political career was over. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Messages began arriving at the station. They came from Kethrani all across the galaxy, individuals who had been hiding in shame for years. Some were born without luminescence, like Vethara. Others were plague survivors who had lost their glow. They had watched the council session through broadcasts, and they had heard Vethara speak. They wrote to thank her. They wrote to tell her that she had given them hope. They wrote to say that for the first time in their lives, they did not feel alone. Vethara read every message. Some of them made her cry. Others made her angry at how much suffering her people had caused. But all of them reminded her that what she had done mattered. Commander, Grant called Danny and Vethara to her office a week after the council session. The partnership program is being restructured, she told them. The committee decided that the focus should change. Instead of showcasing the best of each species, it will emphasize building genuine understanding. She smiled slightly. Your partnership has been cited as the model for the new approach. Danny laughed. We are an example now. You are heroes now, Grant corrected. Whether you like it or not. That evening, Danny and Vethara sat together on the observation deck. The stars spread out before them like scattered diamonds, countless points of light against the endless black. I used to hate looking at the stars, Vethara said quietly. They reminded me of what I could never be. All that light, and I had none of my own. Danny turned to look at her. And now? Vethara was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, the first one Danny had ever seen from her. Now I think maybe the darkness matters too, she said. You cannot see the stars without it. The light needs the dark to have meaning. Danny reached out and took her hand. She did not pull away. Instead, she held on tight. Humans have a saying, Danny said. We say that someone can light up a room. It has nothing to do with actual light. It means that their presence makes everything better. Their spirit, their energy, their kindness. He squeezed her hand gently. You light up every room you enter, Vethara. You always have. Your people just could not see it. Vethara felt warmth spread through her chest. Not the warmth of luminescence, but something deeper. Something that had nothing to do with skin or light or appearance. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for helping me see myself. 1 year later, Vethara stood before a gathering of young Kathrani. Some of them glowed brightly. Others were dark like her. They sat together in the same room, listening to the same lesson, treated as equals. Vethara had become an advocate for Kathrani born with differences. She traveled to colonies and stations, speaking about the old ways, sharing the ancient texts that Sylveth had preserved. Slowly, painfully, her people were beginning to remember what they had forgotten. It would take generations to fully change. She knew that. But every journey began with a single step, and she had taken hers. Danny watched from the doorway as she taught the young ones. His heart was full as he saw her confidence, her strength, her joy. She was so different from the broken creature who had shuffled into the ceremony hall all those months ago. She had found herself. She had found her worth, and he had found something too. He had found a partner, a friend, a future he had never expected. After the lesson ended and the young ones had left, Vethara walked over to him. What are you smiling at? She asked. You, Danny said simply. I am always smiling at you. She shook her head, but she was smiling too. You are a ridiculous human. Probably, he agreed. But you love me anyway. Vethara did not deny it. She had applied to extend their partnership permanently. He had done the same. Whatever came next, they would face it together. She took his hand as they walked out of the room, into the corridor of the station, into their shared future. Behind them, through the window, the stars burned bright against the darkness. And somewhere in that vast universe, other voices were rising. Other forgotten ones were finding their courage. Other walls of shame were beginning to crumble. Vethara still did not glow like others of her kind, but to everyone who knew her, To everyone who had heard her speak, to everyone whose life she had touched, she was the brightest thing they had ever seen. And that was more than enough. That was everything.